everybody, welcome to another episode of dotnetFlix. We're here at the Build Conference 2018 in Seattle, Washington. It's actually sunny Seattle, Washington, so that's pretty cool. And we have a special guest here. It's Paige. And maybe you can introduce yourself and tell us what you do here and what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. So my name is Paige Bailey. I'm a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft, and I specialize in machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Cool. Yep. So that's all stuff that we don't have a lot of knowledge about. So
yep, definitely.
We're
but
really
it's also
curious.
stuff that there were a lot of announcements about today.
There were so many AI announcements at Build this time.
So we saw the keynote and it was all AI. So we're very curious what's new and if you can help us to get into this AI space, because we're actually really anxious to go there, right?
Yeah, and then mostly focused on developers, because we are both developers. We are totally not data scientists. That's way too complex for us guys. So what can we do as a developer to make use of all these new great stuff that you've built?
Excellent. So I think personally that being a web developer, being a backend developer is much more complicated than doing AI.
Oh wow! So there's actually a future for us there.
Cool. But I'm delighted to talk about some of the tooling that Microsoft's just recently pulled out. So have you heard of cognitive services by any chance?
Yes.
Yeah. So cognitive services are very cool. They allow you to leverage the capabilities of deep learning and neural networks with just about 10 lines of code. And you can use any language that you want because everything's just a REST API call.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so we've got a ton of cognitive services, several dozen of them, and more were announced today. So I think we have about a dozen new ones. In addition to Azure Cognitive Search, which I'm really excited about.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, that's so there was a demo today from the MBA to show that basically Azure Cognitive Search applies every cognitive service in our arsenal to the data that you already have on Azure.
Okay.
So it transcribes videos, it describes images, it extracts text from PDF documents and embedded images from PDF documents.
Wow.
Yeah. And it takes all of that information and extracts something called n-grams. And n-grams are just keywords.
Okay.
So
sort of like an index on the data that's in there. Okay.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So it would be like if you said the quick brown fox jumps over the angry dog, it would pick out a fox, it would pick out dog, it would pick out jumps, and you know, those sorts of things.
Okay.
So it extracts the n-grams and then builds a knowledge graph. So suddenly you understand how all of your data is connected, even if you don't necessarily have text or defined relationships between all of it. Yeah.
And then you can search and all that.
Yeah.
Wow, pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's out of the box. So you don't have to do anything to be able to detect people, organizations, languages, that kind of stuff.
Wow. So that's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And then I hook all that up to blob storage or something like that.
Yeah. So you can put your data in blob storage and then apply the Azure Cognitive Search to it.
Okay.
Or it could be a SQL data warehouse or any sort of database or basically any data storage that we have on Azure.
Okay. Very cool. That's pretty powerful. Yeah.
So that's one new announcement that we had at Build today. Another new announcement was that we have FPGAs now for inferencing.
Okay.
And this is more on the machine learning side. But the way, so you've probably heard that like GPUs are super great for doing neural networks.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's because they have the ability to run parallel commands, so commands that are very similar, simultaneously, right? So you can kind of just break apart, you can use the CPU for sequential stuff, and then there's a neural network piece, which is basically the same instruction, so you just run it through all of the different channels of the GPU, and then you do sequential part again with CPU. So it's just basically an accelerator for your code.
Yeah. And that's performance, right? You need
Absolutely.
performance to do that because it's lots of calculations. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. And so Google has something called a TPU, which is a tensor processing unit, and it kind of has the same mentality, the same motivation. You would use it to do TensorFlow algorithms.
Okay. Yeah.
It's specifically optimized for TensorFlow. So that is their solution, Microsoft has decided to go with something called an FPGA, which is a little bit more flexible. You can use it with frameworks that aren't just TensorFlow,
Okay.
and it's you have to do a little bit more work up front, but it gives you pretty good performance. And then on the inferencing side, there's nothing faster. So even though training might take a little bit more time, if you want to be able to make predictions, it's the quickest thing on the market today.
Okay. And I can use that in Azure, so I can just
Yes.
spin up some workload, and that will be executed on FPGAs.
Yes,
Wow.
and I believe it's in limited preview right now, but or private preview. I don't know the specific words, but yeah, you can request to have the FPGA and get allocated one.
Okay, and then that's mainly for real-time scenarios where
Yeah.
you don't need any latency. No, so,
Right.
Yeah, you have a
You want
real-time analysis.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. So I don't have to buy my FPGAs then. I can just rent them in the cloud.
Yeah,
That's
let
pretty cool.
Microsoft
Yeah.
buy them for
Yeah,
you.
let Microsoft do it
Right.
for us.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool.
And so these cognitive services you talked about, right? You guys do all the training, and we can simply use the model. And are there any new announcements for if we want to build our own models? Or
Right. So I believe today there was an announcement for a machine learning framework for .NET, ML.NET.
ML.NET. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we've heard about that.
Yep, and so this is, so historically it had been an internal application called TLC. And if
Okay.
you've ever used ML Studio, which is kind of a drag and drop machine learning
Yep.
environment,
Yeah, I've played around with that before.
yep, TLC is what backs ML Studio.
Yeah. Ah,
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, the code was never exposed in ML Studio, but now it's open to the public, so you can use it, and it's specifically targeted at C# developers. So if you want to experiment with creating your own machine learning algorithms, your own neural networks, you can do it there.
Oh,
okay, so I don't need to learn any Python or R or
Not if you don't want
sort
to.
of exotic languages to me.
Well, I mean, I love Python. It looks basically like a book whenever you read it. You know,
Yeah.
just like plain English. That's why I think C# is so confusing, because you have to have all of these it's like lots of things that and C++, like I just can't wrap my brain around it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if we look at this is all around cognitive services. So I think that's around vision and speech and text and all that kind of stuff. But
Right.
we've also, that's the thing that we have played around with is bots.
Yeah.
We've actually built an 8-bit adventure game once.
Oh, cool.
Running on a bot. So maybe we can show you later. But is there any new announcements on bots?
So I was backstage during most of Satya's keynote, but I believe he did talk a great deal about the Office of the Future and implementing customized bots for that.
Okay. Yeah.
And I also think that he said something to the effect of 100 new services for bots.
Wow.
Yeah, so bots are definitely still a priority for Microsoft.
Yeah.
And cognitive services more and more, especially around natural language processing, are going to be embedded into our
Yeah,
bot
because
frameworks.
the combination is really powerful, of course.
Yeah.
Sounds nice.
So what I also thought was very interesting was the custom vision cognitive services, because it's right there in the middle of that spectrum from I don't want to build my own model, but I don't want to use your pre-trained models because I've got these domain-specific pictures I want to use, and now I can do that with just a little bit of training.
Yeah, and that has a very friendly GUI interface too. So all you have to do is kind of upload a series of images, classify them however you want them to be classified. So I believe Scott or not Scott was
Right.
And
To Scott or not to Scott, that's the question.
yeah, and it's with as little as 5 images, you can get a pretty accurate classifier.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and that's using something called transfer learning. So Microsoft built kind of the bulk of a deep learning framework. So say it built like an object recognizer, right? And you're taking that big chunk that was developed and trained by Microsoft over the course of days, because that's how long it takes to train it on our data sets. And then you can just use a small amount of data to retrain it, because it has that big low level and mid level feature
okay.
bases built up.
Of course,
Yeah.
So you can leverage that. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so basically you only add a couple of levels to the deep network then.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
And that also allows you to get these markers around the objects. That's it, because previously when we were building our 8-bit old school adventure game, we wanted to use basically this technology to automatically detect what's in a scene. And we couldn't draw any markers around it yet, because that was
It could tell us what was in the scene, but not where it was. So it was actually determining what the position was. That was not possible with the firmware model.
But I guess that should now be possible, right? With object identification and custom vision.
Yeah, so the example that we showed today during the Nike and NBA demo was actually being able to train on specific brands.
Oh, yeah.
So you can not only detect shoes, but you can detect like the Nike insignia on shoes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's very, very powerful to be able to do that just out of the box on anything.
And is that still for still images only, or can you only do that in video?
So you can do it. You can do it in video as well using the Video Indexer API, I believe.
Okay.
So, but you would have to apply it separately to each frame of the video,
right.
if that makes
So
sense.
it's kind of a batch, and you have to feed it all the frames, and then it does the reckoning.
It will probably take a while.
Yeah, but maybe we can do this episode and we just index it and see what happens.
That would be awesome.
See what we're talking about, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, cool.
Excellent.
So any other cool stuff you're doing these days at Build?
So man, build is crazy.
Busy week.
It's amazing though. Like this is my first build, and I am so delighted to be here. The entire week is filled with nonstop kind of parties. I think that there are like multiple parties every night.
Yep.
So many great talks. So many talented people coming in to speak. And the
It is
MVPs,
work hard and play
like,
hard, right? Build.
Yeah. This is true, and we even have a petting zoo, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
We saw
do.
actually
Yeah.
saw
Sort of,
little ponies, right?
Yeah.
Little ponies, little bunnies.
Yeah, little
Yeah.
bunnies. It's like
And the so one of the folks on our team, her name is Alison Krug, and she is amazing. She was the one who did the yoga demo during in the middle of the keynotes today. So basically, just be on the lookout for more things like that. So like more ponies, more kitties, more bunnies.
More ponies, always better.
Yeah, and,
de-stressing zone.
yeah, and just having a good time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Sounds
if people want to start playing around with cognitive services or AI, what is a good place to go? A website or
Right. So
GitHub repo, whatever?
So just go to your browser of choice and your search engine of choice and look for cognitive services. The
Okay.
first hit should be Azure Cognitive Services, and they'll give you documentation to get started. Docs.microsoft.com is also a fantastic resource for every single cognitive service, and also on my GitHub, and there's a repo called Azure Workshop, and in that repo there's a markdown file called Free Tier AI, which tells you how, and don't tell my boss I did this, but it tells you how you can use Azure resources for free, like what's the maximum amount that you can use.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, but
You heard it first from .NetFlix, so
yeah, but it's kind of remarkable the number of requests that you can make to cognitive services before you have to start paying anything.
yeah.
So it's like 30,000 per month, and sometimes up to 2 million per month.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
so it's cost effective also.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Pretty cool.
Excellent.
Powerful.
Excellent.
So Paige,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
No, this was delightful. Like,
Yeah.
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. If you want to see more, just look on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is
Dynamic web page.
Dynamic
Which is
web
the
page, but
best
then-
Twitter handle ever.
it's awesome.
Thank you.
Just look it up and see what she's tweeting about. And if you want to see more of Build, you can just go to the Build website. Just also search on the internet. You can see all the sessions. You can see the keynote, what it's all about. And well, we will have another couple of days of fun, and then maybe we'll see you on the next episode of .NetFlix. Later.
Bye.
Bye bye.